Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet, and welcome to A Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined, as always, by Christie Harris.
Hey, I'm Christie Harris.
I'm joined as well by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
And rounding out our quartet, David Rios.
Hi there.
We have a full crew today, and Cassisi's cat in the background to see which one of us also has a cat join us.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to be talking about creating locations for your comics. So a little bit of world building and the craft that goes into that, both as a writer as well as a illustrator or artist, and the considerations you have to make when building locations. Before we get into all of that, Starfield is officially out. However, I've been playing it nonstop since the early access on the 1st. Highly recommended.
I'm amazed we're seeing you.
I know.
Nothing like starting out on a tangent.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I mean, yeah, it is. The benefits of working remotely. Sometimes you can get all your work done on a Thursday, so that way on a Friday you just load up Starfield, and that's all you do. Anyway,
But you give it a thumbs up so far.
I give it a thumbs up. It is a Bethesda game, so if you enjoy that type of storytelling and you enjoy the idea of like you're going to get as much other game as you put into it, it's fantastic. And also, try to roll credits as many times as possible. As a new game plus mechanic that keeps on modifying the game each time you roll credits. Yeah.
Bethesda. What else do they put out?
Skyrim and Elder Scrolls, as well as the Fallout series.
Oh, so games I've never played.
Honestly, that's surprising, Jose.
I know. I can't really say that. I think I played Skyrim for like a minute,
Sure.
and then my friend took his game back.
You can't say everything. You can
That's
become
why
a
we're not
pirate.
president.
Yeah. You can be a pirate and actually board ships, which is it gives you like or if you join the United Colonies, you can go full like maritime marine and do naval like ship-based boarding action, so that hits the spot. Okay.
I just started playing Diablo 4.
Okay, how's that going for you?
Well, I'm not any good at it.
Just put some hours on there, and you'll get up to speed.
That's what I've been told. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted.
All right. So before getting to the rest of tonight's action, Cassisi, David, how's your weekend going? How's your Labor Day weekend?
It was fun. Had some fun with friends on Saturday, and then just spent Sunday, Monday recovering from Saturday. So
Okay.
yeah.
Nice.
Just a lot of different things came about. A lot of yeah. I can't even sit here and say, what it was. I just kind of we're doing some stuff. We're selling my mom's house, so a lot of stuff with that, and just stuff around the house, work stuff, things like that.
Good. Okay, yeah. Happy birthday in the chat.
Happy birthday to that Pop.
Yeah, those Pops. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. Mine's coming up, Pops. Friday will be mine, so
Nice.
We're close. We're close.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, tonight's topic is going to be on world building, specifically building out locations for your comics. So first, I'll open up the floor to grab some examples. So anyone who wants to jump in, can you give an example or something of a comic location that you felt had a big impact on the storytelling and your experience as a reader?
I'm gonna say straight out the bat, was it when the X-Men went to Australia?
Yeah.
To the Outback and whatnot?
Through the Seas Perilous?
Yes. Yeah. That was... I'll probably also pull from another X-Men setting, but yeah. There's the first cat of evening.
Your cat is a hoot, man.
And she's the one that is the less intrusive of the two. So this is not the same cat that was on the other.
Okay.
This is funny. I would say, when John Stewart didn't he become like the Mosaic or whatever, and he built that whole world that was like all those different.
He didn't build the world, right? Or was that APSA did? Or he started gathering from different planets and whatnot that he had visited with Hal, and he was gathering cities and just like bundling them together and throwing them onto Oa. And John took care of it. He basically policed it.
But that location kind of set up a whole string of stories that
Yeah.
were integral in that one part. Yeah.
Now I'm pretty sure didn't John him and Katma build actually make a planet? Like they helped basically form it all and whatnot. It was basically their honeymoon planet.
Yeah. Jose, it looks like you might be having some internet issues. You kind of turn into a robot every now and then.
He's transforming.
How do you know I'm not a
Are you a robot in disguise or something?
Yes.
maybe?
Sorry, I had to get my Transformers reference out.
There we go. Check it off the bingo card. David, did you have any examples you wanted to mention?
I was trying to think of some stuff. I don't know if it really went through that, but I see some of the references. Things that come lately. I've been watching a lot of Transformers stuff lately, so the whole Cybertron and stuff like that. Also, I started reading the Void Rivals stuff. So their locations and within Star Wars, the Transformers and G.I. Joe. Particularly, they haven't really hit G.I. Joe yet, but Transformers related Energon universe. So,
yeah.
But I like some of the themes. I'm not going to ruin it for people, but I like some of the things that they play off between the two main characters and all that. So there's histories and things like that with the universe that they're in. So that's some cool stuff that popped in my head. But like I said, most of that's stuff I've been reading around lately. So
sure. The example I would give, well, I could give a cheating example and say Krakoa because it's both a location and a character. But actually, I'd also say the Savage Lands are what sticks out to me. Just how alien it felt for the X-Men to suddenly be stuck there, as well as having the location itself pose as much a threat as anyone else in the book, essentially. So I fell in love reading that arc because I just wanted to explore more of the Savage Lands and see what all was going to happen in there. So,
excuse me. We got characters like what was it, Sauron from the Savage Lands.
Sauron, yeah.
Khazar.
Yeah, Khazar. I wanted to say. I was trying to think of Sauron's name. I almost said Ridley, but that was the pterodactyl from Metroid.
Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to creating location, we all have experience on doing that from different sides of the craft, essentially, both as writers and artists here. So going to the broad strokes of it, what are some of your insights on the importance of setting and location in telling a story through a comic book? How does a location help to shape either the narrative or the characters in that story?
He's throwing them out there today.
Yeah.
Those thought-provoking ones. Myself, I'd have to say that there's a lot of fun that you can do with that. You can take this is going to be more TV show based type thing, but the same would apply in comics. But you take more of your standard westerns and portraying the characters at the time in that, but then you've also got things like Westworld where it's modern times but allows characters to step back. So in kind of more related, you've got like the new the DC War World animated series that just came out. So you've got things like You've got Wonder Woman back in the Old West. You've got 1920s Superman. So there's a lot of things that you can explore by doing either timing or they're essentially locations. So you kind of think of 1920s Chicago as not only a time frame but also a character setting location. So there's some fun stuff that you can do to kind of dip into that. And like you said, are you placing the character permanently in that location, or is this a hologram / danger, a danger room setting perspective that you can set up? So some cool things that you can play around with that.
Absolutely.
And it's so hard to do, right? Because if you have a good location, you want your characters to have these points where you run into some sort of conflict or friction. And if you do it well, and I'm not there yet, but if you do it well, the location has a story of its own that creates those friction points for the character. So they can kind of help drive the story by putting the character in situations in that location that forces their character to come out even more. But
Right.
again, that's it takes a lot of work to have the location make sense and drive that kind of action in the story.
Definitely. Kind of that point. What that sparked to mind is Night City from Cyberpunk, which the game is good now that's been patched. But if you haven't read the comics, I actually strongly recommend reading the comics. They're actually very well done, in my opinion. But Night City as location is kind of that. It lends itself to the idea that there is going to be someone trying to do harm to you around every corner. Either it's going to be some ripper trying to steal your tech, it's going to be some gainers, or maybe even like some corporate executive who is making decisions that are negatively affecting your everyday life, even though you don't really interact with them face to face. And so building out a location that can lend either to its own society, its own tiers of threats. Kind of like the Savage Lands, you had the fact that like the flora itself was perilous, right? You couldn't always watch where like step where you think you're going to step, or you're going to like fall into like get wrapped up by some vines or something like that. But also it had the dinosaurs and monsters living there, and then also the people living there. The experiments. So building out a location that thinking about the threat tiers in that same thought essentially can really make that location really stand out, I think.
And it's not a comic, but what does it really well? John Wick does location really well. Like here's
Absolutely.
a normal environment, and like under these layers is a whole different environment, right? Like you're seeing a tailor shop, but that tailor shop is not a tailor shop.
No, yeah.
You're seeing a hotel, but that hotel is not a hotel. So
yeah, there's a bunch of layers and tiers to it that like the world building within the world building. So much so that we are, I think it's out on Peacock now. I need to start it, but we have The Continental, a show about a hotel in a movie. Yeah.
You got that similar scenario also with like the Kingsman.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
So that same type of
world.
same type of scenario.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I guess Harry Potter is that too, right? Like
sure. Yeah.
In a weird way. Yeah.
Think of that. So like this segues really well into next question. Considerations when designing a fictional city or world for a comic book. One of the considerations you need to have is what sort of threats can come out of this location or from the setting. One consideration that I always make that it doesn't necessarily make it to the reader is what is the economy of this city? Oh, Jose died. R.I.P. Jose.
He'll be back.
Caught and compromised to a permanent end. May he rest in peace. He'll be back. One of the things is the economy of a setting. It's one of the things I always think about. The reader may not necessarily always, get the docket on imports and exports. But there's something I learned when I read the story Bible for Batman is the fact that when they're creating it, and over the time they have thought out how Gotham itself makes money. Like, what are the trades in and out? What does their tax structure look like? But building out a city, I was thinking about like, okay, why did people make this place in the first place? What was making people money here? And how would that impact the architecture and the society there? Like, if you're building someplace that's high in the mountains, potentially it was, a coal mine or something past, so that would lead it to having sort of a company town style look, and you're probably going to have company men as well as union miners and a special kind of like company shopkeep. Good example of that is the Outer Worlds. Kind of stuff like that. What other considerations do you guys think about or consider when making a setting?
Definitely the political structure, like the government, who, or maybe the underground version of that government, who really runs the place, right?
Right.
And what are the major factions of a place, and how does that pressure the average person to fit into that system?
Yeah.
I do more color, so most of that stuff is laid out laid out ahead of time.
Right.
I mean, the only thing you can do in color is like, kind of embellish. So, like you're saying, if you've set it up to be, say you've set your location to be a casino or something like that, most of the input that I might have is maybe, what colors I may do to pop, pop the the lights going off, the winning things and stuff like that. Or if you're talking about, the setting where the casino has caught the guy that's trying to change the system and they've got him in the back room. Okay, setting the mood for the dark and dingy place to go get for the beatings to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of a good consideration you need to make from both ends is that if the colorist is, and of course the illustrators are going to have their own mental perceptions of the settings you're giving. So when you're creating something, like if I say a casino in Las Vegas 1970s, David's probably going to get a pretty like familiar color scheme that he just thinks about in his head. He's like, okay, I know what this looks like in my head. And so if I want to be like, oh, but we're going to do it in somewhere palette, that's a consideration you make, is you want what you need to be communicative on, or what you want the aesthetic to look like, because settings will impact the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like for example, for me, if you're saying, all right, well, I want to do something, that's like the 70s, I'm gonna start bringing out those colors, the oranges and browns and stuff like that kind of a little more synonymous with that. I'm not going to bring out pastels and stuff like that.
I'm curious, has a writer ever told you, I mean, this is a little on the nose, but have they ever told you, hey, I want general feeling throughout the book, and let that influence what colors you pick? Like, even if they're writing happy scenes, if they go, I want the reader to always feel like they are either sad or real tense, did that influence what colors you pick?
I get that mostly from the artwork rather than like an editor or something like that. I just kind of look at what is it cases where there's a lot of dark, heavy lines, a lot of blacks, and the facial expression and stuff like that will tend to kind of sit around and kind of dictate where I want to go. Is it more of a standard superhero book? Okay, I'm gonna go a little more color. If it was a book like a Sandman book, I'm not gonna do bright and shiny things. I'm gonna tailor that more for the darker, moodier colors and stuff like that. So it all depends. Mostly for my stuff, it's been more more cases of, just work off the artwork, and once the editor looks at it, if he decides, it's more of a, well, we want to make so and so's hair color this color instead type thing. So it's usually small changes that need to be done for consistency or something like that, more than the general, the feel of this book is wrong, you need to go through and redo it. Luckily I haven't had that. So
usually depending on the size of your team and how your team is set up, points of communication may differ, but thankfully all the books that I've worked on have been indie, so I've always talked with the colorists ahead before they started working on it, essentially to get like an idea of where we felt the mood of the book was going to be. The only time I actually had to give a note to a colorist afterwards was a consistency issue where the skybox wasn't dark enough to reflect the time of night it was. There was a midnight mass, and they had done it during like dead of day. I was like, that's no.
Totally understandable.
Yeah. And Jose has rejoined us, figuring out some speaker things, it looks like.
He's on the other side now. He's on that side.
Well, I can do some fun stuff here if I really wanted to. I can do this sort of stuff if I want to. But so we throw the order of the show. What does it say here? Oh, obviously in comics, can sometimes deal both in realistic settings, kind of like my Wolf Hunter or any other style book. Department of Truth is a good one. Or something that is entirely fantastical, doing something like a... wow. Dark Tower. Or stuff like that. My brain just died on me. But doing something that's completely fantastical. And some locations will ride the line. So... as creators, I feel like, and this is something that both the writing and the art play a part in. How do you find you find the right balance between realistic and fantastical for setting? And do you sometimes find that you don't need to maintain any balance at all? You can just go hard realism or hard fantastical.
I mean, I personally like to ground people in something that is familiar, and then I can play with all the rest.
Sure.
So I tend to wax towards, hey, the Earth once was like you remember it, but now it's this, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's through some catastrophe that happened, or maybe we moved from Earth to somewhere else, that sort of deal. But I mean, that's just my style. I tend to say, hey, history is what you remember, but...
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like there's a concept called the triangle of weird in writing, which is for every 2 points of weird stuff, you need to have one real thing to ground the reader. Mm-hmm. And location can definitely, or location history can definitely be a good point. That's how the Fallout series works, going back to Bethesda. You have weird monsters and a weird timeline, but set in a real location.
Mm-hmm.
David, do you find that as a colorist, you end up making color choices if something is going to be more fantastical or more realistic? Do you will that impact color choices or how you work shadows or anything like that, or rendering even?
Well, yeah, it pretty much falls along the lines of what I was talking about before, based off of what kind of artwork it has and how many cats are destroying the it's a lot of it's just dictated by what the penciler and inker, particularly the penciler, and then what the writer throws on that they want the penciler to do. So a lot of it plays off of that, but yeah, it will dictate what kind of colors, color choices, brightness, darkness. It's a good example of that was the covers that I did for for the Kalis books, it's like those were all, outside in the dark and all that. So I used a lot of blue and a lot of darker areas. They were colors, so I tried to push them a little more to make them pop a little bit more. So yeah, a lot of that does play into factors on that. Sorry, the tail. Cat, same thing.
Yes.
If my cat could climb up here, the tail would be right. Same thing. Just smack me in the face.
Yep. I had one down here earlier, but now they have jumped up on their tree on the other side of the room. So hopefully, they don't torpedo another couch.
Can I ask, as the character, just going off that question, like, has there ever been a time when the character influenced the location heavily instead of, or do you write in a way, or maybe perhaps draw or color in a way where the colors of the character influence the colors of the location more, or the colors of the location is really influencing what you do with the character?
Well, for in the coloring side of it, yeah, definitely the location will go and it'll drive. Is it a sunset? You're gonna drive colors based off of that versus at night and things like that. But also, something that you alluded to at the start of that question was, the character and the coloring of the character themselves. That also drive how you're going to do like the backgrounds and that, because you always got to keep the the character front and center of your focus. So obviously, like if we're talking about Demon Tales, for example, you've got a reddish brownish character that runs around with green, green pants and boots, and here's the cat. So obviously, I'm going to turn around and tailor to stay away from browns and greens and things like that in the background. You're going to brighten up the character, and there she is. Brighten up the character, and there's the tail. And, go and tone down the backgrounds and all that stuff to make them pop and go that route. So I'm looking for things like opposing colors. What can I get away with and stuff like that. So.
What about in terms of writing? Have you ever let your character completely influence the location as opposed to, or do you do it vice versa, where the location, you start off with the location and then you create characters to fill it?
Right. The background characters will be entirely determined by location, essentially, because I want to make locations feel lively setting. But the protagonists, I've had a few times where the protagonists need to change location, so I've had to spend less time building out a world, and then, the character actually chooses to do this in this setting, so just push that aside, and we're actually going to go over here now. But for the nice thing about writing Wolf Hunters, because it is set within a real event that hasn't been as well documented, because it was a spy story, so the British government, on purpose, did not keep much documentation on the exact events that happened. So I have the rough timeline of okay, we need to be in London here, leaving London here, on the train here, in Liverpool here. So I'm kind of more hard set by locations, but the stuff on either side of that was all determined by the character. So at the start of issue 1 is a dogfight over is it? Dover. And that's based off a series of dogfights that actually happened on Dover that weekend, essentially. But knowing this character's background and what they would have been doing, that's where they would have been. And then the path of how they get through these locations, that's all stuff that they choose to do. But So finding a mix of both, essentially, of the locations influencing the character and the character choosing how to move about those locations.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There. Yeah. In some of my short fiction, I've done more so stuff where it is entirely character driven. So it would be the character's journey demands that we start here and end here, and so it's all, and then I build the locations out from what the character requires essentially for that story.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about yourself? How do you find that you end up navigating that path?
Yeah, I've for the most part, I've done both though. I've created a world, and then, well, what characters would populate this world? And of that, here's the story that's in it. So here's the protagonist and antagonist and all that. But then I've also created characters and tried to create a story, and then ask myself, well, here's a story. So what world would I set this story in? So
Right.
I've kind of done both. And like you said, you just pick really the main locations of the story, and then their actions kind of drive the journey in
Yeah.
that world to the different points of the story. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So it's gonna be something kind of interesting. Um, how do you go about establishing a sense of place and atmosphere within the panels of the book itself? This is something that, for me specifically, I find the visual techniques actually play a huge part in the atmosphere itself. So this is something where I feel like colors can really shine. A good example of this is the Vampire the Masquerade comic, Winter's Teeth, and how they build out Chicago and the colors going like inside these old timey houses and old timey apartments into Chicago life proper, and the different colors and palettes used. I find that does a lot to build the atmosphere, as well as the actual spacing of the pacing of the comic. I find can also do a lot to help establish that. Whereas, like, if you're doing something in the city, you're probably going people moving fast, talking fast, things are happening. Whereas, if you're building a more empty atmosphere, you might have more empty panels, like if you're doing something out in the country.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely.
Yeah.
And then also, for the writing side, dialogue that involves location-specific jargon can also help. Yeah.
Yeah.
No one in a major city calls streets by their full name. You need to find those abbreviations or their names.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Wow. Short of the techniques that you use to like establish do the establishing shot and kind of bank in where people are, man, I don't, yeah, there are the particulars of the culture of the place, so bringing that out in the dialogue, but it's pretty, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. If you were in the countryside, yeah, having big open panels, maybe very romantic panels that show
Yeah.
big nature or big world, little people, right, type deals, but
With a Whataburger on every block.
Yeah. That's another thing I want to mention is
yeah.
food is also just a human norm. Every culture and location has its own food. So I think that's why a lot of, stories that make you fall in love with location also take moments to talk about the food in that area. So if you're doing something in Texas, you might have Whataburger everywhere.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about Austin barbecue. If you're doing something out on the West Coast, you're probably going to be talking about In-N-Out Burger and Starbucks and Dutch Bros.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, Del Taco. We'll still put a Del Taco on every street corner.
Yeah. Well, Del Taco just references that it's a Silverline comic in general.
Del Taco, the
That's right.
official food of Silverline.
I think there was one in Federal Way here.
Not for lack of trying.
Yeah. I'll go through and grab our chats here real quick while people percolate on the questions here. But yeah, hello to Joe and Ken as well as Lori. Thanks for popping in, guys. And Pops, thanks for hanging out with us and interacting with the chat.
Hey.
I think a good reference, for food and all that is you get a lot of cross locations, like all of the Arrowverse shows always seem to always go back to Big Belly Burger and and stuff like that. So yeah, food is definitely something that plays into the series, especially if they decide to choose a particular false chain or whatever. They have reference. I mean, you also have like Gotham. You have references to the different Italian restaurants and stuff like that. So yeah, I totally agree that the restaurants and things like that do have a big play on environment and locations and things like that, and across the different books in the same universe, the Batman universe and all this.
Yeah. No, I feel like not only can food establish your place, but the style of food can help to further establish that atmosphere. It's like you're not going to catch Bruce Wayne eating at like a fast food location. Like it's always going to be, if you're building up someone who's like intellectual or you're having like a more regal atmosphere, you're going to be using a lot of fine dining, and possibly even then at a point go into your colorist and getting a lot of warm colors, like the classic Italian restaurant look. But if you're making something that's a little more inner city, maybe it feels a little more grungy, a little more fast paced, you might have the scene of the teens skateboarding, like with burritos, like fast food burritos hanging out their mouth or something like that. Yeah. The classic Police Academy scene with Tony Hawk.
That's Tim's dream.
Yeah, that's what I do on every weekend pretty much. Did you guys know that Tony Hawk was in Police Academy? He's one of the skateboarders.
I believe that, Tim.
Oh,
yeah. Was it really?
I didn't know per se, but I totally know that. Actually, side note, off topic, was one of my first regular job at 16. I was working in a toy store / bike shop / skateboard shop.
Nice.
So back then it was like, we learned a lot about, the characters, at the time. The Tony Hawk boards were awesome. The graphics, all that was great.
Yeah.
But you learn about the different trucks and stuff like that, from that point, and then, the bikes and all that. And of course, that was a big time when I was getting all the Transformers stuff. So the toy end of it was great too. So it was an all around, great experience and all that. So I learned at a young age exactly who Tony Hawk was and his impact on the sport.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see here. Going down through my list of things to talk about. We haven't had too many diatribes. You guys keep on going faster than the time I allot for it. We're still on topic.
Pace yourself, Tim.
We've thrown cats in. We've thrown Del Taco in restaurants.
But we haven't had,
we're trying here.
We're trying, but we haven't had the full 15-minute diatribe where Jose and I talk about specifically this one issue in New Mutants.
A cool thought going off your last point though about how you can set the ambiance based on the food is the weird part of when you make the juxtaposition with that food. So hey, you create this beautiful meal, and then this person is eating like a savage.
Oh yeah.
We're I can think of movies where this is done. I can't necessarily think of a comic where this is done. Like, for instance, when in Dune,
I can.
the Baron go ahead. Go ahead.
No, just saying, Justice League had an entire issue devoted to Flash explaining why he's got to keep eating. 5,000 or 10,000 calories in
Yeah.
food, and like his whole like, hey, who was it? I think he went with Hal Jordan. He's like, thanks for buying lunch. Like, if I didn't get my free meals, stipend meal at Justice League headquarters, I'd never make it through the day.
Yeah.
So, like, they definitely took like an issue, like, and explained that.
Yeah.
That's why, like, and I still haven't seen the new Flash movie, but there's definitely a point in there where they explain or talk about how he's got to eat food, and I just think it's really cool that they kind of reached
Yeah.
back in the comics for that.
Yeah, Lori in the chat also mentioned that exact thing. My mind went to X of Swords, where they go to Outworld, and they're being the X-Men and the Arakoans are being sat down to eat across from each other, and Wolverine just starts demolishing everything in front of him.
Yeah.
It's like, I have had nothing to eat in 3 days, and I've killed so many people.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
Well, he's not
Murder
normally
works up an appetite.
Yeah.
He's not normally the tact guy, so
No. But it's that same exact setting where you have everyone wearing like these elegant like silk dresses, and the Arakoans are kind of being more and a bit more decorum, and then you have Wolverine sitting next to Jubilee, and he's just going to town. Let's see. Okay, next thing, where is it? Oh, so it's gonna be something. So depending where everyone is at on their career, but this is something that does come up even just within the same run of a comic, essentially within the same volume. But handling consistency on location, and either keeping location the same or having it progress, but in a way that makes sense. So both writing and art, you really have to think about the consistency of location, making sure that it's suddenly not someplace else, or suddenly something's there that doesn't make sense. For me, this is I kind of had to really hammer consistency out intensely going into Wolf Hunter, because all of issue 2 was on one train ride essentially. And train gets established in issue 1, and we leave the train in issue 3, but I have to make sure that this is the exact train that it would have taken from London to Liverpool. All these carts are in this order, and they have to stay in this order, and people have to be able to cross from these things in this amount of time, but also I need them to move quickly because they need to be somewhere else here on this next page. For me, that took a research on that particular train. But yeah, as writer or as artist, how do you handle consistency, specifically as it relates to location or our setting?
I mean, I've never had to deal, my stuff is so short, I've never had to deal with a whole bunch of, consistency throughout, but I could see how you'd have to have the end in mind, especially when you have big story ideas, because, you can quickly get into a position where, hey, the end is here and you save the world, and now the world is something completely different, and can you even write stories in it anymore because of that? So I could see how it'd be very, very difficult if you don't have the end in mind, and you can quickly find yourself in a position where you have a difficult time even writing stories in that world, or maybe the power creep that you create in the world is so ridiculous that it doesn't even seem feasible to even tell stories in the world anymore. Yeah, you can't destroy the world 15 times, right? You can't. You gotta really have the end in mind when you start dealing with locations and altering them in major ways, I think. But.
Yeah. Let's see there. So I guess Jose, since you have dealt more on the illustration side of things, when you're dealing with a setting, if you're inking is probably one thing, but for art in general, what do your references look like for keeping consistency on that setting? Also, so Dave, you can talk about keeping consistent colors, because if colors got a whack.
Yeah. I think you need to find a point, right? Am I still getting all robot-y?
A little bit.
A little bit.
I just think you need to pick a point and center around that. So, like, I made the joke about Whataburger, but if you had that as like your pinpoint, everything else could cycle around that, and people can relate to that easier.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can say from a coloring standpoint,
That's my thought.
Is one of the things that I have to do all the time, or I tend to do, is I try to back out and kind of look at the range of pages, because when I'm going through and I'm coloring something, I have to be consistent. I have to really start looking at the drawings to see, who's where, what's where, what are they wearing? Are they wearing a green shirt at the beginning of the issue, and at the final issue, the final page, and it zooms out and has all the characters, are they still wearing that green shirt? And is it a light green? Is it that? So, I tend to scan through a bunch of different pages to try to go back and do that. And sometimes it's hard, because depending on what kind of coloring you're doing, if somebody gives you an entire book, you have a lot more of that ability to go through and do it. But sometimes you get books that you may have been working on with somebody else. Somebody may have done the first half of the book, or if you're doing a story and it's 4 issues and you're doing issues 2 through 4, for example, you have to go back and take into consideration what the other colorists did, in issue 1, or even within the same book. If it's broken down and they farmed it out to a couple of different colors to do, you need to be ready to go through and keep that consistency. And maybe it's something as a colorist, if you have all that stuff, or maybe it gets to a point where it requires an editor to go through and review all of that, because maybe you as colorist A don't ever see what colorist B is. So you're relying on what the editor is saying. Well, colorist B went through and they established this, so we need to go through and fix your pages to match how everything went. So there's that that whole looking at the big picture and trying to establish a consistency across not just colors of characters and all that, but same thing with backgrounds and locations and stuff like that. So when you may be dealing in a story that's jumping back and forth between one location and another location, going to headquarters, where you're dealing with an office building and all this stuff, and they're dealing with the political side, and then they flash into, their cohorts who are down in the seedy side of the city trying to find, the bad guy or whatever. So you got to have consistency going back, where you may flip and do a bunch of things in the nice part of the city, and then go back and have to tie in and reestablish that mood for the seedier sides.
Yeah, definitely. Another thought that I mentioned in my notes, but kind of go back to the way Casey said he likes to do his world building, incorporating real-world elements into your settings and locations. And sometimes this can be tricky, because if you get something wrong, then you might have someone try to actually you in the comments. But and I also dealt with this before, dealing with Wolf Hunter, and also with a book I have upcoming, which I can't talk about yet, and which I need to get a script turned into Roland. No one tell Roland. But
it's not like this is being broadcast right now.
Absolutely not. It's not a multi-network broadcast going out to several different channels and VOD and podcast services afterwards. Like, subscribe. Open this. Thank you. Open this to everyone on the floor. How do you go about adding in real world elements to your locations? You do a fake location with a real world engineering, or do you do a real setting with fake restaurants, or everything real and then fake characters in that real space. How do you go about doing that, and what's the prep work you do building that location with that real world stuff?
I mean, for instance, I will staple it on like a landmark in an area that is common, or the building that is the biggest building, and then everything else around it can change. But everybody knows like the Sears Tower or the Renaissance building in Detroit. Like people know what that is, the shape of it, and everything, and that's the familiar piece. And then you can back off.
Yeah.
The
That's
Flatiron Continental.
yeah.
Exactly.
Or even an activity, like maybe baseball is the thing and they don't understand it, but it's called baseball and everything is shortstop and all those names
Oh
they
yeah.
just assign to people. Like that's your role in society. You're a shortstop, right? Because we do this baseball government and it's ridiculous. But because you ground everybody in the sport, that's the only
Yeah.
thing consistent and everything else is, out of whack, right? And you see how that has been perverted over time, but you're still grounded because you know all the roles of baseball, and it's funny hearing this new world approach to baseball. What is it? Idiocracy? Idiocracy?
Idiocracy?
That
Yeah.
movie where Gatorade was now
Get
the
Yeah.
drink, like
Yeah.
that they would drink instead of water or something like that. So you kind of have like these common staples, even though they're not even used the same. It just
Yeah.
grounds people. Oh, okay, I kind of understand.
Yes.
From the coloring point, it kind of ties into the artwork and all that. Sometimes we have to throw in some actual real world photographs, maybe a sky line, a sky, a moon, something like that. But it gets a little tricky because unless you're out there running, taking all your photographs, you have to go through and you have to look at some of your stock options and real pay attention to the licensing and all that. So that may involve you know um, if you have to modify things or whatever so that you're not you know taking their license, and all that. Maybe a bit from here, a bit from there, and putting in create something new, tweaking stuff like that. But sometimes we've, had to throw in something like a sky or a moon just to, because trying to recreate that through art is a pretty big chore. And depending on what your penciler and inker are, they can go through and they will go and draw the moon. They may use references and all that, but they'll put a lot on line art. But what I see a lot of times is they kind of draw. Sometimes they'll draw a circle and a couple of wavy lines in there to hint, okay, this is like a moon, and you have to kind of push it a little bit further. So.
Jose, did you have any thoughts on that?
I wasn't gonna say much.
He's in the
I don't know
zone.
what to say.
He's in the art zone.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know.
I
I've
was
been
focused. I was focused on a book. I'm not even gonna lie. I was focused on a book. The book
That's
was
all
vexing
right.
me. Sorry. I apologize.
You're good. Okay.
All right, book's done. We're good. It's really simple book, but
Yeah, sometimes there's little details you have to get just right.
sometimes like you don't want the lines to look all wonky and whatnot. And
Okay, well, it has been about an hour, and we have run through my questions. Does anyone else have any points or things they want to talk about as it comes to building out locations for comics?
I wanted to comment on you guys were talking earlier about, and I made, like I said, I made a quick reference about Whataburger, but I think it's important. Like if you're doing a comic focused on an area, like focused on Chicago, you said people from Chicago are going to know what Sears Tower looks like. You know what I mean? They're going to know what Empire State Building looks like. The people from New York. So use stuff that people are going to see. And me personally, like, I would go through and, if this particular comic book ran through like the Poconos,
Mm-hmm.
I'd want to see stuff that I saw when I was living there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that will help to like kind of like bring the reader in, because he's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
dude, I know that where that's at. That's awesome. You know what I mean? It just kind of grounds it with them,
Yeah.
and I don't know, makes it a little more dear. I'm definitely going to be a lot more fond about the books that happen to talk about places that I've actually been,
Right.
and actually like get the locations correct. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that book's gonna mean more to me personally because of that particular fact. X-Men didn't really matter to me until I actually went to New York. You know what I
Right.
mean? Spider-Man, I'm still not a big Spider-Man fan, but Spider-Man really didn't matter to me because I'd never been to any of the locations that Spider-Man had been to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until I'd been there. You know what I mean? Until I went to DC and saw the Washington Monument. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, dude. So I don't know. Having locations that people recognize, I think really helps to draw the reader in.
Definitely. Yeah. And kind of what I like seeing is, and also kind of, I'll also talk about Lurms in there, but I like, if you can, like, go from like an A level landmark down to like a C level landmark, something like locals will get. It's like if something was set in Portland, you can like open with a shot of Mount Hood or something like that. But eventually, I'd like it to see like the reference to like Cooch Street, because that is just like Mount Hood is like big enough that everyone in Oregon kind of recognizes that. But if you're in Portland specifically,
Right.
you know what Cooch Street is. And kind of Lori talking here about throwing dates in the
Or
story, and
the
that
the gorge. Like, if
yeah.
those people that know where the gorge is know, you know what I mean? Oh yeah,
Hmm.
you want to definitely get that reference right, because
Yeah.
And the only thing I could, I said it in the beginning, but when location is really done well, it is a character and it has its own story and its own course that is moving along with the story of the protagonist and
Hmm.
antagonist. So, if a simple one is the world is ending and how it gets there should be
Yeah.
told in the story just as much as the journey of the hero. And so
Absolutely.
a lot of times we just kind of, myself included, we kind of turn a blind eye and let the location just be there without it having a story. And that's when it kind of falls flat. So if, as a writer, you could sort of develop the way you tell the location story, uh, I think that would serve the whole project as a whole. Um,
Yeah. I can Daredevil did it really well. Thinking about how deep ingrained into different things Wilson Fisk is,
mm,
and how his conflicts with Daredevil end up causing different projects around the city to either get money or lose money, or
Mhm.
cause different gain stars and implications, or cause things to shift balance. So um, almost writing a story arc that goes in tandem with your actual story
mhm.
arc, but specifically for a location.
Yeah.
I totally agree with what Jose had said earlier. Uh, we had taken a trip, and we had ended up in New Orleans. And shortly after we got back, we saw it was a movie or a TV show or whatever, and we saw the exact place where we were. We saw, um, the right outside the bar that we were at and all that. So that does hit. So, and also with Tim's point is there is the universal areas, the Statue of Liberties, the you know whatever for those particular areas that gets the general. But it's always nice to sneak that extra little bit in that the locals
Right.
know, that
Mhm.
brings
Yeah.
that familiarity as well. So I totally agree with that as well. So you guys make great points.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll get wrapping up here then. Does anyone have any news, appearances, anything you need to share?
This
I
guy.
am doing SA.
This guy.
I am doing Daytona Beach Comic Con this coming weekend with
Nice.
the Silverline fam. Some of the Silverline fam. And like Roland's gonna be there, Tommy's gonna be there. I think Rob Davis is coming, and Haley's supposed to be there. So John Crowther, it's gonna be awesome. It was awesome last time. Didn't get anybody to volunteer to let him slam him into the table, but
Yeah.
you know,
Hopefully,
How
I
was
can.
your
I'll just put the word out this time.
How was your con last weekend?
So the con was pretty good. The trip was interesting. Traveling with Roland and Tommy,
Okay.
I loved it. It was great. But I don't think Tommy likes to take things serious at all. So he's been like, the car we had some like electronical stuff, and so he's sitting there fiddling with it, trying to get it all to work right. And of course, as per usual, Tommy was trying to get some little kid in trouble at the show, trying to get him not listen to his teachers.
Nice.
And like other than that, it was great. I got to meet Mike Belcher. Like I talked to him and chatted with him like plenty of times, but never actually got to meet him. So I got to meet him, meet his son Aiden, some other artists. I got to like talk to a kid that really wants to get into comic art, but wasn't sure where to start, you know what I mean, in regards to artwork. And so I got to like give some advice and stuff like that. Sold some stuff and had a good time. Came back and got sick.
Of course.
But
Classic con crud.
it wasn't no, it wasn't that.
Oh.
Was it Del Taco?
So con crud usually takes me about a day or two before it like starts to hit, right?
Yeah.
This hit the day we were coming back, and I did the math backwards. And I remember my daughter was sick during the week, and I forgot she slept on my pillow.
So you were the super spreader at the con.
Yes, I was.
Okay. Lori, I don't think anyone's gone to Baltimore,
That was
unfortunately.
me. I think most of everyone got a fist bump.
Yes. We're mostly West Coast, and except for Jose, who's Florida, but he's honorary West Coast. I won't be at Rose City, but I will be at KimuraCon in November. With
You're
the
not
social
going to
media
Rose
team.
City? That's in your backyard. You're not going there?
I'm not this year. I'm being a little more specific with my stuff because I'm going where I get invited. I got invited to KimuraCon, so that's where I'm going. So which is also a Portland one, but this is specifically for anime and manga, and I'll be with the social media team. So
you need to get a hold of the people for, was it RoseCon, Emerald City?
Rose City, yeah.
Yeah, so that I can start going out there because that would be awesome.
Definitely. I think
I'll come hang out with you too.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try to get a see if they can't comp me a creator's booth when they have a full volume of Wolf Hunter to throw it on the table.
Right.
Right now, I don't think the cost would be in it for me.
Yeah.
Although if someone would let me body slam them through a table, maybe we can be like going on. But now I'll be at KimuraCon, so if you see someone dressed up as Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen or Kevin Mask from Ultimate Muscle, that's me with the social media team.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
You always make things so much fun.
Next week's topic. I projected a little bit here. All right. Have a good night, Lori. Thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah, have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.
Night.
Thanks for stopping by.
It is going to be next week's topic. I have projected, and I have the head title is Starfield Has Ruined Our Lives. Yeah. But it's going to be talking about how staying current with media affects being creative. So the time cost of staying current versus the constant inspiration and knowing what's up to date. So,
that's a good one.
Yeah, so we talk about how what you lose by staying current, but also what you gain by staying current.
Mm-hmm.
You gain a headache, stress.
Mm-hmm. You do.
Maybe heart condition. I don't know.
You do.
You lose a lot of sleep, but sometimes that new stuff is real fun. All right. we'll be back next week at 8 p.m. to talk about that. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, so those respective days.
Right, those guys are all right.
All right.
Hey, I've been on both. So
Oh yeah.
I randomly pop in if they need somebody else. That's what happens
It's a
Sunday.
good thing we're all like family and team, man. Because I'd be like, oh, you're all kinds of Benedict eggs going to the other team.
I used to be the producer for Wednesday Wham back in the day.
And you got put here.
Yeah.
Everyone sounded like they had helium.
Yeah.
Was that before there was a Tuesday?
That was before there was a Tuesday, and that was also before we were on StreamYard. That was we just had the one show, and it was me running a Zoom call through OBS.
Ah,
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that must have been fun.
wasn't too bad. Not any weirder than my normal streaming. Although I started using the Twitch's proprietary stream software, and it's actually surprisingly decent. It's not as powerful as OBS, but it gets the job done.
Haven't you been using that for a minute, or are you saying that's something new?
I've been using it for a month or two now. OBS I've been using for several years, so I'm really familiar with it. But the new Twitch software came out earlier this year, and I've been experimenting with it, and I do enjoy it. It integrates well with everything I use, so yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Well, any closing thoughts before we say goodbye to the wonderful people?
Love your cats.
Location.
Love your cats. Your cats will love you.
Yes.
They come in, they steal the show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
Buy
My cat doesn't like me. My cat's all like, sir, human, you've not fed me? That's coming off your desk.
Yeah. I definitely had a moment where I was leaned back in full goblin mode playing Starfield over the weekend, and my cat just walked to the side and just jumped up and slapped my chest. Yeah. Time for food.
Well,
Yeah.
When I was playing Final Fantasy, one of my cats, who's currently on the counter now, always used to love to lay down and sleep between the keyboard and the monitor, just right there.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'd be sitting there and I'd be watching my character camera view looping around and around and around because she just happened to be laying on the arrow key or something like that.
Yep.
So
I haven't had that, but my old MacBook, all along like the edging of the top, it's got like a little plasticky, rubbery edging, and I didn't realize it. And I would let my wife's cockatiel land on the computer, the top of the computer, and just sit there. And he'll like walk around, and he'll never turn and do his business on my keyboard, but he always picked at that black thing. And I didn't realize he was doing it. And I'm like, what is this like speckle stuff on my computer? And then all of a sudden, I look up and I feel across the top is all jagged.
You're lucky your screen didn't come down on you.
Right.
So
it's like, thanks, Sonny. Thanks.
So just check out the different projects on Silverline and see if there's something coming up that looks good for you. They're always posting updates and working on new stuff.
Don't we have a new Kickstarter coming out next month? I think we have a new one coming out next month.
I believe so.
I think we have a Kickstarter every month at this point.
Yeah.
If you get a chance, go to indieplanet.com/Silverline. That is our comic shop front. Go ahead and check out all of our different books that we have available for you.
Oh, that's another one. I got Obsoletes 2. Got my copies of Obsoletes 2 at the show at Pikeville.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, give some different titles if you're there and find something that's interesting. Check it out.
Yeah.
Be a good read.
All right. Well, we'll see everyone next week. Until that time.
Make mine Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.